Good morning, Craig. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you.
Good. Thanks for agreeing for a Q&A this morning on the Joinery Hour. If you wouldn't mind, by starting as every guest, just introduce yourself and your company, please.
No, good. Thank you very much for the invite.
No worries.
Good morning, all. I'm Craig, and I work for a paintings manufacturer of Remmers. We're a German-based company, and we manufacture. Part of our repertoire is wood coatings, which I'm partly responsible for in the UK. I have been in the joinery industry since the day I left school, nearly 4 years ago now.
Wow. So that brings us on nicely to a bit about your background. So I know you've got a hell of a background in the joinery industry. So how did the background that you come from, tell us a bit about that and how it ended up in paint, basically?
So yes, I was quite fortunate enough. I knew exactly where I wanted to work when I left school, and within 3 or 4 days of leaving school, I'd started working in manufactured joinery. I went through the first couple of years through apprenticeship on the CITB schemes. So I was part of the initial phases of the CITB in the late 80s, early 90s, where I am a qualified wood machinist. So I've worked for the same company for nearly 30 years.
Wow.
Making windows, doors, conservatories and stairs, just the general bespoke joinery manufacturing. As I was approaching the 30-year mark, I started to think, was this how I wanted to work for the rest of my working life? So I was toying with various avenues, one of them being lecturing in colleges. But an opportunity arose that our paint rep at the time was leaving the company they currently worked for. And I thought, oh, that would be interesting. Whereas, to spread my focus from not one company to multiple companies. So, yeah, that guy left a company called Remmers, and I applied for a position at Remmers, and then that's how I became part of the paint industry.
Awesome. And the rest is history, as they say.
The rest is history. It kind of lent itself, because during the process of the where I used to work, we went from in the early 90s, when everything was supplied with maybe just a coat of primer if the customer was lucky, with no fitting. And we went through that journey like everybody probably else has, that stuff started to become factory glazed, all the ironmongery is fitted, and obviously a fully finished painted product.
Sure. So you will have seen, obviously, being in the industry that long, a vast improvement in paint systems over the years for timber windows and doors, because obviously there used to be a stigma around that, timber itself, the paint finish, etc. But now, from what my limited knowledge on paint, the systems are amazing. It's come a long way. So just quickly talk about what it used to be and what it is now, how it's improved.
Yeah. So when I first started, a factory finished window was alien to the majority of joinery manufacturers. So it was just a coat of primer, and that was it. There was no real attention to detail on that system. When we went on the journey of coming up with factory finishing, that's when you started to learn about what microporous paints mean and that sort of thing. So since I've been part of the paint industry, you get to learn a little bit more about what the paint systems actually do, and how they're developing. So probably a lot of people are used to pure acrylic paints or alkyd emulsion based paints. That's, yeah, they're probably, be coming towards the end of their service life, shall we say? That the technology behind the development in paints is, just progressing at a pace. And I would say in the next 3 to 5 years, that technology of paint that we've been used to for the last maybe 20 years will become obsolete.
Sure.
It'd be nothing to fear, because probably people would have left these paints behind anyway.
Yeah, and as far as I'm aware, pretty much everything is water-based paints now, right?
Everything is water-based paint.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
The market for the solvent base is predominantly internal. It is there, but it is, I would say, it is decreasing rapidly.
Sure. And so a little bit about what cuts Remus apart from your competitors, without mentioning any names. What makes you unique, and why should you be the go-to?
So yeah, at Remus, one of the obviously I was a customer of Remus. I was a customer of a previous paint supplier beforehand, and we switched to Remus quite a few years before I joined the company. And it was the ethos behind Remus see themselves as a working partner of the customer. We are not salesmen of paint. We want to work with customers, whether that be a complete system or just help in the finishing side of things. But we will work with companies from the very start of their processes to the very end, and we'll work hand in hand with them, with the experience that we've got to be able to, for them to develop.
Excellent. And a bit about there's lots of different paint systems out there, depending on the timber species that you're using, what you're doing with it, etc. So talk a little bit about choosing the correct system for the correct material, and if we could have a little bit on focusing on Accoya, because as you know, we've recently got that test evidence for the French doors with Accoya. So how does Accoya differ to other species? Does it, doesn't it? I don't know.
Yeah, so Accoya is different. Everybody's well aware that it's a valuable timber material for making windows and doors because of the lifespan of the timber. So with that lifespan of the timber comes benefits of the paint maintenance cycles as well, because the timber does not swell and contract like conventional timbers, or doesn't swell and contract as much as conventional timbers. Then the elasticity of the paints you use is not taken to the limit season on season. So you get far extended maintenance cycles of the paint finishes you supply on Accoya as to what you may do on softwood.
Because it's not shrinking and swelling and using the elasticity.
Shrinking and swelling throughout the seasons. Yes, absolutely.
Right, interesting. But
Yeah.
even on species that do shrink and swell slightly with and use the elasticity in the paint,
yeah,
we're still getting what sort of guarantee on the timber finish now?
So
on the paint finish.
Yeah, so it's everybody kind of says, "Oh, I want a 10-year, maintenance cycle," and 10 years is achievable. But we always look at a sliding scale. So on average, a paint, you would get between, depending on color and timber species you're applying that paint to, you would get anywhere between 5 and 12 years
Right.
before maintenance is maybe required.
Sure. Okay. So is there different paint systems, like for example, whether you're painting softwood, whether you're painting oak, whether you're painting Grandis, is there different specific systems for the material you're using?
Absolutely. So depending on the size of the company and the timbers you use, there should be a specific route that you want to take with the products available. So if a company is, a smaller company and they will use any timber, obviously they don't want to use different paints for different timbers. You want to use a generic paint that covers all. But if we are, produce more and more and the speed up is through, that generic paint is probably not the route to go. So that's where we would come in and design a system that suits the individual joinery company to their best. So they're producing the best quality product at the quickest route and simplest route.
Yeah, and that, obviously, essentially, that's what everyone wants.
Yeah.
So, awesome. Humidity, moisture, and temperature of stored paints is a massive thing I learned only the other day. Talk to us quickly a little bit about that.
So humidity and temperature in a factory go hand in hand. It's probably the most important thing for a joinery manufacturer to understand. So it is the biggest problem is during the winter months. So if we imagine the air will hold a certain amount of moisture, that air in the colder months is quite small. When that air expands, it can hold more moisture and will hold more moisture, and it extracts moisture from various sources. One of them sources can be timber. So in a factory where we've got these super heating systems now, that cold air comes into the factory, gets warmed up really efficiently, and expands. And what happens is the relative humidity of that factory will drop naturally. So depending on where you are in the country, this may be an issue for you. So for manufactured joinery, you want a relative humidity around 55 to 65%. At them levels, the moisture content of your timber it will stay stable. So if you're purchasing softwood, 16, 17%, ideal for external joinery, and your factory conditions are 55 to 65% through the manufacturing process, when you send that timber window out, it'll still be 17%, which is ideal because then the timber hasn't moved during the process. So all these, obviously it has an impact on the paint that you're applying, but also with locks. If you were ever struggling to fit a lock in after you'd machined it, it'd been in the factory for a couple of weeks because the timber maybe has shrunk and it gets a little bit tighter. So all them little things, they'll all be heat and relative humidity factors.
Okay, and what can we do, to monitor that? Obviously, it doesn't have to be thousands and thousands of pounds.
No. The initial step for any joinery manufacturer I always recommend is they go onto Amazon and they buy little humidity and temperature digital displays that you can probably get a couple of them for 8 to 10 quid. And you just put them up in the factory. And that's the first step of understanding where you are with, I'd never get too despondent if it was 45% maybe, but I would get concerned if it was 10%. But if it was 10%, that manufacturer would already know of issues.
Sure. Okay. But if they at least know what the moisture and the temperature is, etc., they can obviously seek advice to do something about it if it's high or low.
Yes.
So just to finish off, Craig, some quick wins tips that you can give on finishing.
Okay, yeah. So one of them is obviously a simple one is, we're just monitoring your humidity and temperature conditions because, with paint in the winter, water-based paints will get thicker. The colder they are, the thicker they are. and they'll be harder to use. So it's a good idea to keep the paint in a warm area before you use it.
Not near the shutter door.
Not outside or near a door which is open the majority of the day.
Yeah, and a lot of people do that, right?
It is surprisingly common.
Right.
Another I've got two kind of pet hates that I don't like to see at joinery companies. One of them being masses and masses of tins of paint that have got a couple of liters left in them. I would always suggest that we mix them up and recycle as much paint as we can, because you paid for it in the first place. Recycle it. It doesn't matter what color it comes out at the end, and use it up as mid coats. It's a valuable little exercise to carry out. My other pet hate is the amount of sanding that we generally see throughout the joinery industry. It's not, everybody kind of knows that they do it too much and they don't want to do it, but it seems to be ingrained in us in the UK that we go far way over the top with the amount of sanding we do. It's great for a paint. It's great for a paint supplier, because all the paint you've just put on, you're sanding off. But it's far better to spend a little bit, be more diligent before a paint processes with the tooling and the sanding processes beforehand, to enable us to speed it through a paint process.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And if anyone has any more questions for Craig when we go back to the floor, you will be on the paint and finishing table, I guess.
Yep.
Lovely. Thank you, Craig. We'll speak later.